Okay, if I timed this video right, it should be out by Thanksgiving weekend. If it isn't, boy, this would be awkward. But if it is, happy Turkey Day to all who celebrate it. While there isn't any turkey-based manga as far as I know, this manga that I'll be covering today is a pretty close second. Introducing Rooster Fighter, a manga that I've been waiting to cover for a while ever since its anime announcement earlier this year. So it's about time I get into this. The manga was created by Shu Sakuratani, who despite having a long career in the manga industry, only became active somewhat recently. It originally started as a web manga serialized in Heroes Inc.'s Comiplex website in December 2020, with the first volume being published in Japan about 5 months later. And ever since then, it's starting to gain a popular reputation, especially in Spanish-speaking countries like Mexico, Spain, and Argentina. And as for us in the US, Viz Media picked up the licensing and released the first volume on August 16, 2022, currently having 6 volumes in English, while Japan has 8. And as of the time of me writing this, earlier this year they announced an anime adaptation coming next year with Adult Swim broadcasting it in the US, which makes sense as Adult Swim has Toonami. As for the story, it takes place in modern-day Tokyo, where monstrous kaiju rampage through the city and a rooster fights back by cockatooing it to death. I'm just imagining the chicken scream sound effect along with an explosion with that. Okay, I should probably give more context than that. We get introduced to our main character, Kenji. He can be best described as a hard-boiled wandering loner, hooking up with ladies before leaving the next day, never staying longer than necessary. But he does have some redeeming qualities like being respectful and appreciative, such as in the first chapter when he saved the old man who previously saved him from troublemaking kids and gave him food. He even cleans up the mess afterwards and goes back to make amends with the hen he left behind, only for him to get cucked by another rooster. Is that a pun? It doesn't matter, I'm keeping it in the script. As for why the kaiju exploded when Kenji shouted his cock-a-doodle-doo, it acts in a way similar to the Dragonborn shouts from Skyrim, where Kenji's shout frequency matches the frequency of the kaiju, a phenomenon called resonance. And Kenji uses this resonance to find a certain kaiju called the White-Eyed Demon that took his sister Sarah away. So now we know the main character, his motivations, and how this story will play out. And while I was reading this manga, I would say it gives me this old 90s Western vibe. And it makes sense because in an interview with Sakuratani, he stated that some of the major influences of the manga, besides basing his main character off of a pet rooster that his grandma accidentally turned into fried chicken, no, I did not make this one up, you can look it up for yourself, was Clint Eastwood's Gran Torino and the acting performance of a gloomy emo teen. Oh, and Ken Takakura. Would explain Kenji's brooding and stoic honorable behavior, the traveling from place to place fighting enemies, and the variety of characters Kenji comes across his way. And on the subject of characters, there are a few mainstay characters that eventually travels with Kenji, like Pyoko, a young chick who was raised by a Yakuza member and after Kenji saves her father figure, decides to follow him on his quest, with Kenji reluctantly allowing her despite his dislike of children, after she saved his life in a later chapter. Another is Elizabeth. She's interesting in that she originally was one of Kenji's old one-night stands. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, she trained herself to get revenge on Kenji. She almost falls for Kenji's, charm, I guess, but restrains herself and reluctantly joins Kenji's quest. Besides training for revenge, she's a good contrast to Kenji's goal, as it's more noble and was motivated after seeing the destruction the kaiju left behind, including her killed loved ones. She also provides some lore on these kaiju demons, and it turns out they appeared pretty recently, about 3 years in fact. While we don't know the full scope on how these demons appeared, what we do know is that sometimes these kaiju are harmless and helpful towards humans. Their skin appears either red and blue mostly, and in special cases, humans and animals can get affected with these plant-like parasites. It feeds off of their suffering like extreme emotional distress and trauma and mutate into a kaiju, but can turn back into a human if the parasite is killed. Which does explain why Pyoko's dad and a few other characters were back to normal after Kenji defeats them instead of, blowing up and dying. Also, quick note, I do want to point out the very detailed art style. It's drawn pretty realistically, and I like how Sakura Tani still exaggerate the facial features of the animals, especially during the comedic moments of the manga. Now, on the subject of comedic moments, this manga is pretty funny. I wouldn't call it laugh out loud funny, but the best way I can describe it is that it does absurd humor pretty well. I mean, we have a rooster for the main character and Elizabeth using a phone despite not having fingers. Although I do want to point out this one moment in the first chapter where a kid tries to feed Kenji a piece of fried chicken. With the added meta context, this moment here, this is such irony. So yeah, that's all I have to say about this manga. I'm sorry this video is a little disjointed. I wanted to try to get this video out in a timely manner. Plus the next video that I'm working on requires a crap ton of editing, so I have to get back onto that. But overall, I would say Rooster Fighter is a solid good manga that you should check out when you can. I am curious how the anime will tackle the adaptation considering the small amount of chapters, but we will have to wait until next year to find out. Anyway, thanks for watching everyone. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell for more of my manga related content. I hope you have a decent day and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Take a deep breath,